she was chanting this beautiful mantra that Priya Kishore Devi was singing when we all came in today. Can you stand up, Priya Kishore? Turn around, please. She's a 14-year-old girl. Very innocent and pure heart, but she's very studious in her studies and everything. But to cultivate and engineer in our character through uncovering the great wealth and treasure and joy of our heart, and to be an instrument of that grace in whatever we do. That's the great need in the world today. Is there any questions?
Thank you so much, Swamiji. I was wondering if this is also related to the prayer of St. Francis. St. Francis of Assisi, I meant.
Yes. Actually, in April of this year, where are you from?
Cuba.
Cuba. I was in Italy in April, and I was in La Grotto. Have you been to La Grotto?
I don't quite remember if my late wife and I were there. I'm not sure.
It's in the province of Umbria, not far from Assisi. And La Grotto is a cave that St. Francis lived in for some time. And there's a whole history of that cave, but I don't have time now. The principles of his beautiful prayer, Lord, make me an instrument of your grace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is despair, let me sow hope. And of course it carries on. Let me seek not so much to be understood as to understand. And he concludes it. In giving we receive, and in dying we attain eternal life. That means the death of the false ego. These are universal spiritual principles. These are principles of bhakti, selfless love.
Thank you so much, Swamiji.
In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is extended to such a beautiful degree in a particular verse. Savaipong samparo dharmo yatobhaktir mokshaje ahoitaki apratihata yatma suprasidati. This is Sanskrit language. The translation is the supreme dharma. Dharma means religion. Dharma means occupation. The supreme dharma for all humanity. All humanity means not just Hindus or Muslims or Christians or Jews or Sikhs or Jains or Zoroastrians or Native American Indians. The supreme dharma, the supreme occupation and religion for all humanity is that which awakens from within us. Unmotivated, loving service. Love and service to God and to other living beings that is unmotivated by selfishness, unmotivated by ego, and uninterrupted by any situation. Pleasure, pain, honor, dishonor, success, failure, victory, defeat, health, disease. Our will to serve with love under all circumstances. Only that state of consciousness can satisfy the heart. Nothing else. We can become millionaires, we can become billionaires. It's not going to satisfy the heart. In a cultured society, people love people and use things. Unfortunately, in the world today, all too often we are prone to love things and use people to get them or keep them. Whether we have a high school education or a bachelor's degree in college or a master's degree or a PhD or a post-PhD or 5 PhDs. Whether we're the father of a family or the mayor of a city or the senator of a state or the president of a nation or the king of a world, none of that is going to give us inner satisfaction. The only thing that can give us inner satisfaction is unmotivated, uninterrupted love. And that love is expressed through seva, through service, through being an instrument of compassion in whatever we do. And what a motivating force that is. A mother doesn't work 9 to 5. A good mother is on 24-hour shifts. Yes. She's not getting paid for it. She's not getting promotions for it. She's motivated by love. There is no greater power than love, because love is the nature of the soul. Love is the connection between the soul and God and the connection between all souls with each other. And that's what St. Francis's prayers is directing us toward. And that's what all great spiritual, saintly people are directing us toward. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, Swamiji. Absolutely.
Hello, Your Holiness. Thank you very much for your sharing of your wisdom. I was wondering, when you first arrived in India, were you familiar with any of the native language, or you basically spoke just English? And if you were not immersed in the language yet, how were you able to communicate with your gurus and other teachers? Was it kind of a spiritual connection, or was there English translators? I'm just wondering, how did you learn from them prior to learning the language?
It's kind of what this book is about, actually.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading
But
it.
I'll give you a summary. When I hitchhiked to India, it took 6 months from London. Now it takes 8 hours, the same distance on British Airways. When I arrived at the border of India, the immigration agent who was there, who wouldn't let me in because I had no money, was the first person of Indian origin I ever met in my life. Never met an Indian, never saw an Indian. I saw pictures of them, different books of yogis and stuff. I never ate Indian food. I never tasted a chili pepper. I knew nothing except that many people throughout history were going to find out universal, essential spiritual principles in India, and that's what I was going for. So I didn't know any language, I didn't know any people. As far as your question, for almost 2 centuries, India was ruled by the British. So there are many people who do speak English in India. At the same time, sometimes I lived in the Himalayan jungles with people who didn't speak English. example. There was Kailash Baba. I met him in the jungles. He was about 65. At least that's what he looked like. He was a huge man. He hadn't cut his hair or cut his beard in about 50 years. He became a sadhu when he was 12 years old and lived in the jungles, wandering around, seeking God all that time. He was a tremendously powerful person. I was just coming out of my teenage years at the time, just turning 20. And he took me in, and he was showing me how to live in the jungle. He taught me lessons that were so precious. I considered it, in many ways, more critical to my well-being than what I learned in so many schools. He taught me how to survive in the jungle. Because when you're living in the jungle, it's not like, where there's grocery stores and bedroom and running water and electricity and a police, department kind of protecting you. And these days, all kinds of security devices. You're sleeping under trees, you're sleeping in caves, you're sleeping on riverbanks. What do you eat? He taught me what foods. Foods means leaves, berries, roots, what was edible and what was not edible. And that's what we ate. You just see something and dig in the ground and pull out a root, like say a little prayer, and then give some to me. When you're hungry, simple things taste real good. But it's an acquired taste. And he taught me, because I would get sick. He'd teach me how to find medicine. The most important thing he taught me is how to live in harmony with our neighbors. There were leopards. There were wild elephants. There were wild boar. There were panthers. There were cobras, vipers, scorpions, and plenty of mosquitoes. Now, when you go to sleep at night, you're just laying under a tree or on a riverbank. These animals, whether you're awake or asleep, you can't compete against them. Sometimes as humans, we have like an ego. He told me, if you think yourself to be superior to any of these creatures, or if you have the slightest fear of them, they will kill you. That was nice to know. He taught me you have to see the living force within them and respect that and honor that. They are part of God, as you are part of God. When you respect them as a part of God, and you have no fear of them, they will never harm you. Now this was a crash course. Because they were, I was going to go to sleep pretty soon. And, every now and then you hear, because I was with him, I actually felt fearless. Because I was with him, I really could love the cobras and the vipers and the leopards and all these other animals. he taught me another thing, which is one of the most difficult things. How to get along with other yogis and sadhus of different sects. It's kind of even more complicated than the lepers. But, you know, I learned. And I was doing, I'm not bragging, but I was doing pretty good actually. Interestingly, he did not speak a word of English, and I did not speak his language, Hindi. But we had such a deep communication the whole time we were together. Just by pointing, just by raising his eyebrows, speaking in a language that I couldn't even understand, everything he was trying to tell me, I was understanding. And these were subtle subjects. Because he deeply cared about me. He deeply wanted me to learn. It wasn't just a profession for him to just teach me stuff. He loved me. He cared about me. And I respected him and deeply trusted him and wanted to learn from him. And where there is that dynamic, it's incredible how wisdom can be transferred from one heart, from one intelligence to another. So some people spoke better English than me. Some people didn't speak any English at all. In another place, I write about this, I was invited by this guru who had so many disciples to live in his little temple with him. And he spoke eloquent English. He spoke the Queen's English. I mean, meticulous, with a British accent, and he was an Indian, sadhu. He was a Swami. I still have his name in my address book. And if you look at his address, he wrote it himself. His handwriting is like art. Beautiful. The way he just wrote it quickly. It was beautiful handwriting, beautiful English. He was so educated. He was so eloquent in teaching me so much. And all of his followers were praising him so much to me. And he invited me to sleep on the same platform with him one night. And he tried to sexually molest me. And I was really scared, because he had this big trident right next to him. And I was thinking, God, you know, he might kill me. He might have some powers. He's a yogi. And what to speak of his followers, you know, if they find out I don't cooperate, I don't know what they'll do. And I was really scared. I was just a little teenager almost. And ultimately, you know, he kept trying and I kept pushing him away, and finally I just pushed him down and ran away. So I learned something from him too. Kailash Baba didn't speak a word of English, but he enlightened me. And here was a man who was teaching me all this philosophy and everything, but I learned what not to do from him. To abuse power. In the Bible it says, seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door will open. That's a universal principle. Does that answer your question?
Very much so, and more. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's very profound.
Thank you. Thank you for a very great lecture, and also highlighting the common aspects of different religions, like from the Bible and the yoga tradition, and also I studied some Buddhism, where you insist on love and compassion and kindness, which is the core essence of all religions. But at the same time, a lot of energy is expended by each religious sect in trying to prove other details, like, for example, whether the earth was 6,000 years old, or say humans existed billions of years ago and all. So each person, I see that they're very compassionate and very nice people, but they may be, each of their beliefs may be not exactly right, but they still are good people. So how important it is to actually expend energy in trying to prove the other details apart from, say, purifying your heart and loving everybody. So because it conflicts with science, so you can see that most of the debate between science and religion is concentrated on these details. Because even scientists agree with the principles of kindness, compassion, and other things, but the most of the dispute is in the other areas, like what was the time frame exactly, and every book will claim their own thing, and that's what. So I run into conflicts because each tradition I go to, they want the good thing also, and you have to believe the other thing also. So it's hard to reconcile. Yeah, so I'm saying that, can you help me, like what do you think how do you resolve it?
How do I resolve it? Srila Prabhupada, my guru, he once said something, and I had a cassette tape of him saying this, and I used to listen to it over and over again. It moved me. He said, philosophy without good character has little or no value. He was talking about a moral principle of compassion. And the person who was interviewing him was a PhD candidate and wanted to get out of that. And said, can I ask you a philosophical question? And he said, philosophy without character has little or no value. Spiritual knowledge, spiritual practice is not just to know, it's to transform. Yes, there is so much information. Different traditions may have different interpretations of history and all of that, or maybe not even interpretations, but different explanations from various perspectives of history. But if knowing all these things does not transform our character, transform arrogance into humility, greed into generosity, hate into love, if it doesn't intoxicate us with that higher experience of love of God, then we miss its very purpose. There's a beautiful story of Lord Chaitanya, who was Krishna himself, God himself, incarnated in this world. And he was in Sri Rangam, a very, very holy place in South India. And at that time, it was the high seat of learning for the whole of South India. And the greatest scholars used to live there. And they used to recite the scriptures. And there was one simple man who used to sit in a corner and recite the whole Bhagavad Gita every day. But he was more or less illiterate. He would not pronounce it correctly, and he didn't even know what he was reading. And the other scholars, they would ridicule him. They would laugh at him. Sometimes they would criticize him. What are you doing here? It's like an illiterate in a class for PhDs. Thank you. Lord Chaitanya came into that courtyard, and and saw the simple man as he's trying to go through the Gita. He was crying. Lord Chaitanya said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "My guru told me to read all 700 verses of Gita every day. But I don't understand what it really means, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right or wrong." And Lord Chaitanya said, "If you don't understand, why are you crying?" He says, "Because I'm seeing the beautiful person of Krishna, who's all loving. And he's taking the role of a servant of his own devotee, Arjuna, and speaking Bhagavad Gita, and driving his chariot for him. To wit, in my mind, I'm just seeing this beautiful picture of how Krishna, this most beautiful, loving person, makes himself subordinate to the love of his devotee. And this melts my heart." And Lord Chaitanya lifted him up and embraced him. He said, "You are the true knower of Bhagavad Gita, because you understand the essence." So we can argue forever. But in this day and age, what I've seen is practically nobody ever accepts defeat. You know, in previous times, if you actually had a superior philosophy, people would say, "Yes, I will join you because I'm defeated." But in this day and age, everyone knows they're right. Nobody listens. People only speak. And people don't accept defeat. So all this argument, where does it really get us? Transformation of heart. Connecting to people's hearts. In some occasions, arguing philosophy touches people's hearts and convinces people. That has to be the result. When Srila Prabhupada came to the West, he was challenged by a reporter. I think it was New York Times or Newsweek magazine. They said, "Swamiji, we already have our own religions here. Why have you come?" And he said, "I have not come to convert. I have come to enlighten. I have come to remind you of what you have forgotten. That we're eternal souls. That love of God is within us. That the beautiful Supreme Person of God is all loving, all attractive. And we can be an instrument of that love."
I have a question. In your lecture, you mentioned that greed is a much more powerful force than, sorry, I said it the wrong way. Love is a much more powerful force than greed. To me, love is a state of being that can empower a state of doing. And my question is, how does one cultivate love towards a person or an idea, a concept, or maybe even a symbol, especially when they are not in front of, physically present in front of them, and or the idea has not been realized? Thank you.
That is what spiritual practice is for. To actually connect with that direct experience within ourselves.
Any tips or ideas that can provide?
Well, the magical formula that I have seen transform so many others is the chanting of God's names.
We have time for one more question over here.
Hi, I'm Shayok from Stanford University. I have a quick question about the two sides of competition. So if you look for an example in sports, competition leads to excellence in achievement. Yet the kind of competition also creates winners and losers and often leads to unethical behavior like drug abuse and other stuff. And I see that happening in all aspects of society, where competition leads to excellence in achievement, but on the other side, it also leads to situations where unethical behavior happens for the desire to succeed. So the question I would have is, how can it, so if we are going to strive for excellence in any field, is competition the only way you think excellence can be achieved? And if not, is there other ways you can think of in which people can achieve excellence without competing, and how to implement those things?
We were discussing that knife, it could be either used for positive or negative purposes. Everything is more or less either favorable or unfavorable according to how we use it. There's yogis or monks or babajis who go into the forest and just chant God's names or meditate. Who are they competing against? And many of them, they gain a tremendous amount of self-realization. At the same time, competition can be a great incentive to increase the quality and quantity of our seva or our service to humanity and to also better ourselves. But we have to understand how to engineer the way we use competition. Now I'm going to give you a very material example, and then I'm going to try to bridge it into a spiritual principle. You probably never heard a Swami citing this example, but I will venture to do so. I found it interesting. I was with, about a year and a half ago, the former manager of the New York Yankees. His name is Joe Torre. Have you heard of him? He is one of the 5 top baseball managers in history. The New York Yankees, 11 years in a row, was not in a playoff. And then they hired him to be manager. And all the press was calling him Clueless Joe. This was a huge mistake. He never should have taken the job. It's a disgrace to the New York Yankees, and they were blasting against him. And he led the New York Yankees in the next 10 years, I think, to 8 playoffs, and they won 4 World Series. So he was good. He said, don't listen to what the press says. That was his first thing. But he explained that, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, and there's competition. He said whenever his team would lose, he would tell his teammates what they should learn as far as what their mistakes were, how they could do better. They have to reevaluate and learn to improve. But he said that he taught them, don't feel bad. Feel good for the other team. The team that defeated you are happy, so you should feel good for them. Don't get depressed. But at the same time, learn. Learn from them, learn from your own mistakes, how you could do better. And he explained that this is how he taught them to be competitive. And he said it worked so well. It led them to so many championships. Srila Prabhupada, our Guru, used to talk about transcendental competition. where somebody does better than us, and that's an incentive for us to do better. And then we do better, and then they try to, and that's an incentive to them to do better, and then it's an incentive for us to do better, and ultimately we're all trying to do better. But we're not arrogant about those people we're better than, and we're not condescending, and we're not envious or depressed because somebody's doing better than us. We can celebrate their good, their success, and learn and get better. If we have a strong spiritual foundation, then we can compete with integrity. We can compete with dynamics with compassion. And we can excel in whatever field we're in. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
At this time, we have to stop. So let's please have a round of applause. Thank you so much, Maharaj. I think this is your fourth time in this lecture series at Stanford, or in this program brought to you by the Bhakti Yoga Club of Stanford University and the Pacific Learning Alliance. As always, it was very enlightening and entertaining and enriching, and we hope you come back again and again. You're one of everyone's favorite speakers here. We will be having more lecture series, and we'd like everyone to take a questionnaire, fill this out, get on our mailing list, give us feedback, and you'll be invited to other programs. And there is now a meal, a wonderful vegetarian prasadam, sanctified, delicious meal that's being served outside. We have this Swami's book, The Journey Home here. The suggested donation is $15, but there's no maximum. And Maharaj has offered to sign these books for you, so please, those of you who haven't got one, or those of you who already got one but want to give some to your friends, come get some books. There is a program going on at the ISKCON Temple every Saturday evening. It's called the Complete Yoga Package. And Sri Govinda Datta Dasa will explain more about it. We have these brochures, and we hope everyone takes one of these brochures. It's a 6-week program that's being offered at 1965.